Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. Something really basic. What's the difference between major and minor? Like a lot of simple questions, super deep. We may have more questions than answers by the time we're done. Let's look at it three ways. We'll look at major and minor intervals. That's just two notes. A major and minor scales, and then a major and minor triads. And of course, all of those things really are in play for us kind of all the time when we're performing and composing music. And being able to distinguish between them is pretty important. I remember being really humbled. I was probably 13 or 14 years old. I did a weekend workshop with Jean-Luc Ponty's band. Jean-Luc Ponty, the great jazz fusion violinist, and his keyboard player took us keyboard players aside. I was young. I was 13 or 14. And just some simple sort of ear training testing. And I was having a hard time distinguishing, the way he was playing the chords especially, between major and minor triads. Oh. Well, let's talk about how to identify them. So let's just start with some basics. Now, it's a lot to do with physics, and I'll show you what I mean. Any note that happens has a fundamental and then another harmonic, and then another harmonic after that, and then another harmonic after that, which is another octave. I just flipped it down again. And then weirdly, the harmonic that comes after that is this note. So we actually have built into the physics of sound an interval that gives us something to talk about. And that interval is the major third. Let's look at how it's built in the conventional system that we all use. A major third is defined for us as 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a major third. And of course, there has to be a minor third. In our system, taking something from major to minor is narrowing the interval by 1 half step. Here's C and E, a major third. Here's C and E flat, a minor third. Did you notice I said E flat? We could spell this note just as easily D sharp. What does it say here? It says D sharp there, but it's a third, C, D, E. So we say some kind of E, E flat. Major thirds and minor thirds. Now, interestingly, as it happens, the major scale we'll talk about it in a moment, gives us major intervals between the first note of the scale and the other intervals. Well, the 4th and 5th notes are what we call perfect. And then let's finish it off. Each of these intervals between the C and the D, that's a major second. Could I make it a minor second? Sure. Pull it down. That's a major third. To make it minor, 3 half steps. The interval of the 4th and 5th are perfect intervals. We'll talk about that in a moment. The 6th step of the scale is a major 6th. Could I make it minor? Yes. Starts off being 9 half steps. I pull it down, 8 half steps. The major 7th, 11 half steps. I could pull it down to become 10 half steps. Major 7th, minor 7th. Now, all of those intervals could become minor, right? Except for the perfect intervals. And I'll show you what I mean. If I grab this 4th step of the scale and pull it down, I get a major third. Same note. It's just the way the scale is constructed. It means the 4th is a perfect interval. The G, when it gets pulled down, it looks like I could have a minor 5th, doesn't it? But that interval between the C and the G flat or the F sharp is a special interval called the tritone, and it has a special place in music theory. It's neither minor nor major. We call it diminished. It has a very special place. It doesn't belong in this discussion. But the fourth and the fifth, the octave, the unison, those are perfect intervals. The second and third, the sixth and seventh may be major or minor. Well, let's take a look at a minor scale. There's my root again, C. Has a major second, but a minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, and then I'm back home again to C. Scales can be major or minor. I suppose we could have a minor scale that had a minor second, couldn't we? If I did, it would sound like this. The most important thing about a minor scale is that the third step of the scale is minor. In fact, there are a bunch of minor scales that we use in classical music. Here's a really important one. Root, second, minor third, fourth, fifth, minor sixth, major seventh, and then home again to the root. It's called the harmonic minor, and it plays a really important role in classical writing. Let's talk about triads. A triad is made of 3 notes, and that means it's got, I suppose, you could think of it as having 3 different intervals built in. There's the interval between those 2 notes. There's the interval between those 2 notes. And of course, I guess, the interval between those 2 notes. Let's start with the bottom. Can you see that that's a major third? C to E? Probably can. A major triad's middle note, the third, is major. And that means that the interval here, we can inspect it and discover that it's minor. As it happens, E to G, a minor third. A major triad has a major third on the bottom and a minor third on the top. What do you think a minor triad has? Yeah, you got it. Minor third on the bottom. The interval from D to F is a minor third. And the interval from F to A, that's a major third. Minor triads have a minor third on the bottom and a major third on the top. We have all kinds of triads we could build. Basically, the major and minor triads both have a mixture of thirds, right? A major third and a minor third. There are triads that have 2 minor thirds or 2 major thirds. But there is one that's important for us. For instance, right here on the 7th step of the scale, there's a triad that has a minor third and then another minor third. Usually functions kind of to lead us back home again. This has a very strong effect, doesn't it? Just for the sake of completeness, let's talk about triads that have 2 major thirds in them. Special sound. It's called an augmented triad, and you really can't get one in a major scale, but here it is, major third, and then another major third. I had to use G sharp, which isn't in the C scale, to get that special sound, and it's a fairly biting sound. It tends to work as a passing chord. Here we go. C, C augmented to F. That raised note pushes us there. Major and minor triads. Okay, how does this play for us? Well, any scale has in it a bunch of major and minor triads, and we were hinting at that earlier, but now let's just take a look at it. C, the root, D, the 2nd step of the scale, is minor. E, the 3rd step of the scale, is minor. F, the 4th step of the scale, it's major. G, the 5th, is also major. A is minor. B is that diminished chord, and then we're back home again to C. Major and minor is all about the difference between intervals, whether they've been expanded a little or contracted a little bit. We talked about expansion and contraction as it applies to arranging and creating new melodies and harmonies. And major and minor is an excellent example of it. It's possible to write music that ignores major and minor tonalities, right? The nature of intervals is such that they could kind of just float around in space. But we saw at the very beginning that the physics of sound suggests roots, fifths, and major thirds. And your ear naturally accepts that as one of the foundational principles of hearing, and I think, but to some extent, of music. It's worth playing around with. Next time you grab a shape on guitar, ask yourself, is that a triad? Is it something else again? What's the third? Is it major or minor? Sometimes you're playing a chord on guitar and it's neither. It's just roots and fifths, no third. I can't tell if it's major or minor or not. Perfect intervals play a role, but today is all about major and minor. Well, gee, there's a lot to think about around this, and I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe and ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos, and I'll see you next time.